The NFL draft is right around the corner, and 9 times out of 10, it matters much more where a player goes than the caliber of player he is in terms of early career success. You could have this stud quarterback who is going to break every passing record ever, but if you're a terrible team like the Colts and draft him, he could retire in 6 years. You could have a mid-level wide receiver, but if you stick him in the right system with a good quarterback, good offensive coach, he could put up monster numbers his first few years in the NFL. It's all about where players go. With that being said, we'll be discussing the best and worst landing spots for each of the major positions in this year's draft. Starting off, of course, with quarterback. And best case scenario, there are a few I could go over, but the two obvious ones to me are the Bears and the Vikings. Both teams, good offensive lines, good weapons. The Vikings have Kevin O'Connell, great offensive mind. The Bears, a little bit less sure. Brought in the Seahawks coach to be their OC. Eberflus is somewhat questionable as a head coach. They're unproven at the coaching position, but they've got weapons, they've got a line, they've got everything built up around the rookie quarterbacks they're going to try and bring in. So I think those are by far the best two landing spots for a rookie quarterback.
I would agree with that. And I mean, when we're talking about the Bears, we're obviously talking about Caleb Williams. Everything is set up for success when it comes to Caleb Williams being a good quarterback in Chicago. The only thing you could potentially say is a slight drawback is not having an offensive-minded head coach, but they have the receiving weapons, they have a solid offensive line, they have a pretty solid backfield, so they have pieces around him to win games right now, and they have a second first-round pick to add to that offense or add some talent to their defense. Now, when it comes to Caleb Williams in general, he's not going to fall past the first pick, but if we're talking worst fit for him specifically, I think it would be any of the biggest market teams. If it was a team in LA, a team in New York, Giants or Jets, a team like the Raiders, where we have more available for players to do. We've seen players get in trouble in the past, and the Giants would be more the media, and the Raiders would be everything that goes on in Las Vegas. But if there is any type of drawback with Caleb Williams, and I don't think it's necessarily a major drawback, it is his tendency to kind of not care what the media thinks, not care what a lot of other people think, which can be seen as a positive, but in a city like New York, with the media that they have, it would blow up in the fans' faces. It could potentially blow up in the organization's face, and then how that would affect the organization. Not going to happen, but if this is a worst fit video, those cities would be his worst fit. I'm not even as concerned about what would be around him.
I heavily disagree with the Raiders take. I know I mentioned the Bears and the Vikings. I think they're actually, in terms of an on-the-field prod, you say, oh, Vegas is a bad place to play. It only is a bad place to play if you've already got characters. But they've got a very good coach in Antonio Pierce. Their weapons, Jacoby Myers, Devonta Adams, presumably will be looking to get a running back at some point in this year's draft. The O-line's not bad. I think that's also a good landing spot for a rookie quarterback. Maybe we don't see one of the top guys go there, but a Bo Nix, Michael Penix, maybe J.J. McCarthy, if they find themselves there, I think they'll find success. I think that's a great landing spot. And the whole, we worry about Vegas and drinking thing, I think Vegas has gotten to the point they're just buying all their players 24/7 Ubers as the only real acceptable thing for the organization to do. I think Vegas is a great spot, though. I don't know why you're dismissing them. But unless you've got any more good landing spots for quarterbacks, I think we now get into the negatives about where the players could find themselves, which would not be a favorable situation. First off, the Patriots, and this is not some slight on Gerard Mayo or their organization. We all know what they've done, but right now, weapons are terrible. Coach is unproven and somewhat defensive-minded, very defensive-minded, played defense in the NFL, and the O-line, not well put together at all. Fail all three of those criteria. They don't have a good coach for them, nothing around them. Whether it be Jaden Daniels, whether it be Drake May, whether it be J.J. McCarthy, no rookie quarterback is going to go into that situation and find success year one, unless they also invest assets in moving up, building that O-line, building a receiving core, which I don't think they can. I think it is too late in the process for them to do anything to drastically improve themselves, and they're going to be stuck throwing a rookie quarterback out there to learn in the fire.
Well, the one upside the Patriots have is they did sign Jacoby Brissett, who they can put out there as the starter to have a young quarterback like Drake May, Jaden Daniels, sit behind, learn the offense, not be thrown into the fire right away with a team that's kind of in some organizational turmoil. turmoil, doesn't have the best receivers, not the best offensive situation. That they do have going for them.
I was going to actually add on to that. Jacoby's had injury issues in recent years, which has kind of made me back away from praising that move. If he stays healthy, yeah, he'll be a great veteran leader and can take some of the heat off the rookie quarterbacks. But if we find ourselves in week 4 and he bangs up his shoulder, bangs up his ankle, and he's on the sideline, and there is no one left besides that number 2 or number 3 overall pick, they're cooked.
Where I will agree with you, for the Patriots in general, for a young quarterback, if they decide to go in the young receiver route, which we'll talk about receivers a bit, is that, call me crazy, but when you were leaving or you got rid of the greatest coach of all time, and there's some, maybe call them hit pieces coming out about him, and there's organizational turnover, and you're moving to a new head coach that's replacing a guy who's been there for over 2 decades, it's not going to be all smooth. It's not going to be perfect in year 1. They may not even have it right now with the head coach they have. So that is going to take some time, and throwing a young quarterback right into that situation, there are going to be ups, there are going to be downs, and if it winds up working out, the quarterback has to be the perfect prospect for that situation. And that's why the Patriots are not the idealist of landing spots.
Someone else who's not an ideal landing spot is the favorite team of a certain someone.
Do I get to address this first?
You are welcome to address it. I'm just going to comment on it and let you then have your say. Their O-line's terrible. Even if Andrew Thomas stays healthy for an entire season, they're in trouble at that position. The best case scenario for them is to either draft an O-lineman, draft a receiver, and just bite the pillow on one more year of Daniel Jones. But if you bring a rookie quarterback in there, no weapons, no O-line, a quarterback in Daniel Jones who is shown to be, I think he's got better PR than anyone else. He's somewhat of a diva. He held out a demanded $40 million a year. He got paid more than he should have. Threatened not to show up. I think he could be somewhat of an issue in that locker room if he finds himself staring down a replacement after 1 year. I don't think that's a good landing spot. Say what you want about Dable. Did not have a great year as a coach last year. Maybe he bounces back this year, but that's a question mark. The wide receivers, the weapons, the O-line are just not there. So really, any quarterback they bring in there, screwed.
Well, there are a couple of reasons why the Giants are a horrific landing spot for a young quarterback. And selfishly, I'd want them to draft a young quarterback because I am just tired of Daniel Jones and want to see some new type of talent in there. But if I am being objective, speaking for the perspective of a young quarterback, not a good landing spot. And I think
Shadur Sanders is on the way next year.
Maybe it works out. But the reason they're not good, you mentioned a bunch of them already, but you take a look at the wide receiver room. Their best receiver is Darius Slayton, who in an ideal world is a high-end to mid wide receiver 3. He's currently their best or most proven wide receiver. Wan'Dale Robinson has been solid in spots from the slot, and Jalen Hyatt completely unproven last season, although did not get much playing time, and we know how rough the quarterback situation was, going from Daniel Jones to Tyrod Taylor got injured, to Tommy DeVito, to back to Tyrod Taylor. It was all over the place. So the wide receiver room is a mess. The offensive line, if it has any hope of being successful next season, completely hinges on Evan Neal turning into a at least average starter at right tackle. That hasn't happened yet, especially we're talking about that 6th overall pick being a quarterback. Out of the 3 that they might have a chance at selecting, JJ McCarthy, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, I don't think Drake May or Jaden Daniels really have a shot at happening, but at this point in the process, it's somewhat conceivable. Let's say Jaden Daniels gets drafted at 2, the Patriots aren't in love with Drake May, and the Giants are in love with him and decide to trade up.
The problem with that is, what assets do the Giants have? I mean, if the quarterbacks they can get, I think it's JJ, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix Jr. I don't think they're in the Drake May conversation, just because someone like the Broncos or the Vikings have a lot more short-term capital to go up and get that pick than the Giants.
The Broncos don't have that much capital.
Well, excuse me, they were willing to mortgage more of their capital. They're also willing to send players. Like, what players can the Giants send as part of that trade?
I'm just saying it's somewhat conceivable. I think if the Giants wind up taking a quarterback in the first round, it's one of those 3. 2 of them I don't think are likely.
If they draft JJ, who is the youngest quarterback, who has been in a very successful situation in college, and he's going to have to go from that to the Giants, the two opposite sides of the coin, he is going to fail, and he is going to fail spectacularly. He will earn those Zach Wilson comps. And I love JJ. I want the Vikings to pick JJ because I think they have a good system for him and will develop him. But if he goes to New York, you are just killing his career. The only quarterback I think could survive in New York of this year's draft class is maybe Caleb Williams, maybe Drake May, just because both those guys can get out of the pocket and create on their own. If you put Jaden Daniels under the amount of pressure the Giants O-line generates on him, he's going to die. If you put either of the older immobile guys in that pressure system, they're going to be sacked 60 times. And JJ's is too young, too inexperienced with that level of heat. Like, the only guys you have a chance of making work are Drake May and Caleb Williams. And we're just going to keep talking about how terrible the Giants are. I'd love to do it all day, but I think we've both made our point here.
Well, I just have something else to add that we haven't mentioned yet when it comes to the Giants. And we mentioned the media, in the New York media earlier this episode, and Daniel Jones specifically. Daniel Jones, if they draft a quarterback, he's going to be the starter to start the season. We know he has to be there on the roster this year because if they cut him, they would take a tremendous dead cap hit and aren't saving any money. So immediately, we know the Giants probably aren't going to be very good. He has a bad game that we know he's prone to have. You're going to have fans clamoring for it. You're going to have the media claiming for it. You're going to have them clamoring for the 6th overall pick, or if they trade up to the 4th or 5th overall pick, to be inserted as the starter. And that is just going to be a whirlwind of toxicity, a quarterback battle. Fans aren't going to be happy. How are they going to react when the first round top 10 pick is struggling in a bad system? How are they going to react when Daniel Jones is struggling? Everything combined makes it not a good situation for a young quarterback. Real quick, because you said best fit. The only quarterback, they don't have a chance at Caleb Williams. Well, I think everyone knows that. Drake May, an outside chance, and I think he's really the only quarterback that could potentially work on the Giants that they have a small chance of getting just because he fits most, I think, what Brian Daboll looks for in a quarterback and the types of quarterbacks he's been successful with in the past.
Well, look, Brian Daboll and Josh Allen, who it's kind of hard not to be successful with. He's got Daniel Jones $40 million, so maybe we don't trust his ability to evaluate quarterbacks, given what he has inflicted on your franchise. We have talked about the Giants too much, so I'm going to bounce on over. The Commanders seem like a somewhat negative spot at first glance, but then you look at it a little bit harder. The coaching staff have got faith in this new organization, new administration, and they've got good wide receivers. The running backs are also solid. The O-line clearly has some holes. They addressed some of it in free agency. They brought in veterans to help out that backfield, help out that defense. I think Washington's not a terrible landing spot for a quarterback. It's certainly not in the same conversation as New York and New England. The only other team in that conversation for me is the Broncos, just because what they'd have to give up in order to get the quarterback. No weapons for them. Sean Payton may have sold all snake oil and might be out of luck in terms of the coaching sphere. And the O-line, I think Russ made it look a lot worse than it actually was last season, but still not special.
I mean, if the Commanders do things right, and right now things are looking up, they can definitely grow with new ownership. They're changing the organizational culture. They have a brand new head coach in there. If they get the right pieces and they continue to build in the right direction, I think things could look very good for the Commanders in even the near future. Where I'm a little nervous for them, and in the short term, specifically with this draft, is I don't like the notion that Jaden Daniels, if they pick him, it's because he fits their system more, and their offensive coordinator has worked with that type of quarterback in the past. Because what if Cliff Kingsbury all of a sudden has a great 2 years, 1 year with Jaden Daniels at quarterback, is phenomenal. He's then getting head coaching offers in the NFL or head coaching offers in college if they start calling again. Then that offensive coordinator is gone, and you have to bring in a new offensive coordinator who maybe you're not able to find one that works
So
well with.
your issue with this is conceivably it could be successful in the first 2 years, and then they're going to have to find a new offensive coordinator after the quarterback's already established.
I don't like the idea of drafting a quarterback when, even if you think Drake May might be better or have more potential, just because the offensive coordinator you have currently may work better with this type of quarterback.
I think they might just like Jaden Daniels more. I also think you're out of your mind if you think Cliff Kingsbury is getting an NFL head coaching job in the next 2 seasons, regardless of what they do offensively for the Commanders. And college, you see coaches is exiting en masse out of college football right now just because it has become the Wild West in terms of NIL deals, the NCAA being themselves. He's not going back to college to be head coach again. He is staying right where he's at for at least the next 3 years, maybe more, as an offensive coordinator for the Commanders.
And that's if he even does a good job.
See, he does a good job. The idea, oh, well, they're drafting because the OC wants this player and he might skip down. That's a weird criticism. The Broncos, I mean, you made a TikTok. We don't need to talk about them super long. We can move on to wide receivers here. But no weapons, no line. Sean Payton, probably not the nicest quarterback or nicest coach to be around for a young quarterback. Maybe one of the older guys like Bo Nix or Michael Penix makes it work. Although I think if the Broncos find themselves staring down that pick at 12, they're just going to trade back. I don't think they're going to spend a top 12 pick on a 25-year-old quarterback.
It's not going to be the worst pick if they do select a quarterback, because when you look at their current quarterback depth chart and their current options, they're much worse than drafting whatever young quarterback is going to be available at 12, whether it be Bo Nix or if they talk themselves into Michael Penix. As long as they don't trade up for a quarterback, I am not against the Broncos drafting a quarterback. It is just if the reports are accurate that they're willing to give a king's ransom to draft J.J. McCarthy, because they're not going to have any assets to then build around him.
It'll be a bad spot for J.J. if they do that for him. But enough quarterbacks, enough of the New York Giants, at least for now. Let's talk about wide receivers. And deepest wide receiver class ever, yada, yada, yada. We all know the top guys are. We all know Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably going 4th overall to the Cardinals. In terms of landing spots where guys really have the most chance to succeed, the clear-cut 1 and 2 for me, and there's a very close 3, but I still see 1 and 2 as being far superior, are the Chiefs and the Chargers. Just because they've already got that quarterback, they've got a head coach who is offensive-minded, who understands how to get his star receivers the ball, and is also not willing to put a ton of pressure on them, while still having someone in that offensive system who can generate double coverage on their own. Maybe not so much for the Chargers, but they still have another decently talented wide receiver, in my opinion, Quentin Johnson. Different video for a different day. They're not just going to be the sole guy getting double teamed every time. If they draft Rome Odunze, if they draft whoever the Chiefs like later in the first round, I think they'll have success as a rookie. Maybe not for the Chiefs players so much, just because Andy Reid-led offenses don't always work great with rookies. But I think those 2 landing spots are the best 2 for wide receivers.
Well, the Chargers are a dream scenario for a rookie wide receiver to go into, especially a high-end one at that, whether it be Marvin Harrison, Odunze, Malik Neighbors. If they trade back, draft a Brian Thomas or Adonai Mitchell, or who else is there? Xavier Worthy would probably be at the late half of the
They're
first.
not taking Xavier Worthy there. But I do kind of agree. They've got issues offensively, but the biggest thing for a rookie wide receiver is he has the quarterback in place and he has a coach who will use him.
As for the teams that a receiver wouldn't be set up really for success, I think that goes to the Patriots. If reports are, if there's any truth to the fact they're considering taking Marvin Harrison Jr., that's not a great situation for a young receiver to go to, where there's been a major change in the head coach, there's a major organizational shift. And while I spoke positively on Jacoby Brissett, he's not exactly someone who you want to be your long-term starter. They don't have excellent receivers that would be next to a Marvin Harrison Jr. or a Malik Neighbors. So it wouldn't be an ideal situation. And when it comes to a young receiver in general, I think like a Titans with Will Levis, who, had a great first game and then certainly tailed off towards the end of the season. New head coaching staff, new changeover in organizational structure. Not exactly an ideal situation outside of the fact they won't be drafting a receiver. I mean, they obviously need offensive line, but if we're talking like ideal fit.
If we're going to go bad situations, let's at least talk about teams who are realistically going to draft a wide receiver. I'm going to mention the Jets here just because they clearly need a receiver. They need a lot of things. They've got Garrett Wilson, but the O-line's not great. Aaron Rodgers is old and coming off an injury. They've got Robert Saleh, who I am amazed still has his job, but clearly does not have a mind for offense and getting his young players the ball. Any receiver who goes there is going to be second fiddle on an offense which could find itself starting Zach Wilson once to get a quarterback after a month. This is not a good place to go as a rookie wide receiver. I would desperately try and stay out of that neck of the woods.
Rookie offensive talent. I mean, they could wind up drafting Brock Bowers at 10 if he falls. A high-end pass catcher.
I mean, Brock Bowers is kind of in the same boat as the receiver. So he's that Travis Kelce-esque tight end. He's undersized. He's not going to be in there to block. So I think it's good to talk about him in the same breath as those guys.
Which is why I'm throwing it in. I mean, you take a look, old Aaron Rodgers, if his last Packers season tells us anything about how he deals with young players and their growing process and their mistakes, he doesn't deal with it all so well. He doesn't have the patience for it. Now, I know that Garrett Wilson is a young receiver that he's excited to play with, but how much is he going to want to play with a rookie wide receiver that's going to have rookie mistakes, and he's coming off an Achilles injury, could be injured very early in the season. Again, he's 40 years old. So from the receiver perspective, a quarterback that seems to be losing his mind, doesn't seem to like to work with young players, wants to only work with Allen Lazard and Randall Cobb and guys he's played with before. It's a disaster of a situation for a young receiver to go to.
I also want to touch on the Colts. I know they've got decent receiving depth. I think they are more likely to select Brock Bowers, mainly because he is probably going to fall a little bit. Not going to be that top 5 pick he was projected going into the season. I don't think he would do well there. I don't think Steichen knows how to use more unconventional tight ends that well. I think they've got a bunch of receivers who they're going to throw to. Pierce, Downs, Pittman are all going to get more targets than a rookie tight end. I think Anthony Richardson is at best unproven, at worst incredibly inaccurate at the NFL level. So that is a big question mark at that quarterback position. I think Bowers would struggle if he gets drafted there, and that is also kind of a negative landing spot for me.
I actually feel the opposite when it comes to Bowers. I think the Colts would be the perfect situation for him. You get a tight end that can control the middle of the field. You have a very young and talented quarterback. Give him another option to throw to.
So you just bashed on Will Levis for being young, unproven, tailing off after one game. That is the exact same issues with Anthony Richardson, except Anthony Richardson's got way bigger injury concerns.
But he looked much better as a prospect if we're talking play on the field. I mean, Will Levis was throwing ridiculous throw after ridiculous throw, just hucking it down the field into double coverage, hoping his receiver would catch it. Most of the time, the pass was also inaccurate, so that didn't help.
Oh, it's funny you mentioned that because our good pal Anthony Richardson completed, 50% of his passes at the NFL level? It was not a special performance from the quarterback perspective. If Brock Bowers wants to learn how to block linebackers as Anthony Richardson scrambles, hey, he'll be a great fit for the Colts. But there's so much uncertainty at that quarterback position, and there's enough receiving depth as is. A more wide receiver-esque tight end is not going to succeed there.
I disagree. I think the Colts would be an excellent fit for him.
I think
the other really good fit for him would obviously be the Bengals for obvious reasons, but
I don't think the Bengals would be a good spot for a wide receiver to go to just because of, again, they already got 2 guys on the roster, maybe 3 if they extend T. Higgins. Now on to the most important position group on the field, the offensive lineman. And this is a deep tackle class. I got a few high-end guys in the center position, but mostly we're going to be talking about tackles here. And the best case scenarios are pretty obvious. This position more than any other. If you have a rich history of developing players, I am going to say you are a good landing spot, which leads me to say the Cowboys and the Eagles are the 2 best landing spots for rookie O-linemen. Obviously, we know the Eagles are looking to replace Jason Kelce. Maybe they go Jason Powers.
Throw the Ravens in the hat in the ring there too.
Not really, but you look at a guy like Jackson Powers Johnson, I am sure he would have success. Maybe not be as prevalent of a tush pusher as Jason Kelce, but clearly he would succeed as a rookie. In terms of tackle play, Cowboys looking to replace Tyron Smith. I think any of the guys they could draft, whether that be Olu, Alt, whoever they trade up for, or whether they stick and pick, will be a great selection there. They will develop them nicely. Another concern I'll throw out there, and this is specifically directed to one team. If the turf you play on has an unfortunate history of injuring players at an excessively high tick, I'm going to say, hey, maybe we should keep these 350-pound freaks of nature away from that, which is why, predictably, one of the worst landing spots for a rookie O-lineman is the New York Giants to me.
The reason the Giants aren't a good one is because it depends on the type of offensive tackle they draft.
There are more reasons than just the turf. We know they can't coach that position.
If they draft an offensive, which they've changed the offensive line coaching staff, so hopefully that helps things. But when it comes to like Joe Alt specifically, we have a behemoth in Evan Neal, 6'7", with a forward lean issue. That has not worked out. It's been a disaster. You have Joe Alt, 6'9", very good prospect. Evan Neal also was a very good prospect, might have a slight lean issue with his blocking. Could be another disaster.
It's going to get worse if he goes to the Giants.
Exactly. So, I mean, if they're going to draft an offensive lineman, I'd be a little nervous based on history if it's Joe Alt, if I'm being honest.
I mean, I'd be nervous.
I think he's a very good prospect. I just don't trust the Giants.
Look, man, they could draft If they could somehow convince our good pal Panay Sewell to re-enter the NFL draft, if the Giants bring him into their team, he is going to probably fail. I also want to touch on the Seahawks. I know Charles Cross gets a lot of mouth service on this program. Interpret from that what you will. But they have failed to develop their rookie tackles in recent years. I don't think they're particularly strong anywhere in that offensive line. I think they've got a quarterback who is prone to taking sacks and maybe doesn't have the best spatial awareness in the pocket. That's why Geno Smith struggled at points last year. Obviously, the line wasn't great, but that was on him too. It's kind of why I think the Steelers aren't a good landing spot for any rookie lineman. I just don't think they're on the same levels as these other two. Having a quarterback who knows when to get rid of the ball and can sense pressure is an underrated part of developing an O-lineman and making them not look terrible. That's why all the Bears offensive lines looked horrible during the Justin Fields administration. Yet when Bajan Zero came in there and started taking snaps, they suddenly got a lot better. Cornerbacks. The beauty of the cornerback position is it's one of the most athletically dependent, where you either have it or you don't. I don't think it matters tremendously where a player goes. If they're going to succeed, they're going to succeed at this position. But some things which help. One, you'd like to have someone beside your rookie cornerback who can cover the true wide receiver ones, who can keep the opposing team's best player under wraps, at least until they've got a little bit more run, a little bit more time in the league. Two, you would like a pass rush in front of that rookie cornerback so they are not defending forever. They are not stuck on an island fighting with the wide receiver, holding him for 7 seconds, somehow not getting flagged, yet the O-line is able to perfectly protect the quarterback and they deliver a ball downfield. These NFL wide receivers will get open if given time. That's why my best landing spot for any rookie cornerback is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've got a great pass rush, they've got veterans in that secondary who can handle the number one wide receiver priorities, and I think they would be a fantastic fit. Maybe he'd have to cover some of the top-tier wide receiver ones later in the year as he progressed, but still, that is a good problem to have. They hit on that pick, they get a Kool-Aid, they get a DeJean, they get really any of the top guys, they will be successful in that system.
Well, when it comes to the corner position and offensive line, outside of quarterback, I think those are the two toughest positions to come in as a rookie and play at an extremely high level immediately. It's not often we see the Sauce Gardners come out their rookie year and just lock down every receiver they go against. That's a position that
normally they throw the flag for holding, but
that's a position that I think can take some time. There are so many high-level receivers in the NFL right now. There's so many good quarterbacks that it is hard to enter the NFL as a corner after going against college receivers the entirety of your career. It's hard to make that transition. The same way for an offensive tackle, it's hard to make a transition from going against college level defensive linemen and edge rushers to then having to go against TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Aaron Donald's retired, but Aaron Donald when he slid out there to edge. It's not easy to make that transition as a rookie. So I think you need to really give them, it's true for all positions, but the most for these two, a year, year and a half, 2 years to really see what they are as far as high-end players in the NFL.
After that lovely bit of fin sitting, I'm also going to talk about the Cardinals. They have no pass rush in front of the rookie cornerbacks they can put out there. They need to fill about 17 different holes. One of those is cornerback. And I feel like they will select someone on day 1 or day 2 of the NFL draft with their, 12 picks, which is an insane amount to acquire. I don't think that rookie cornerback is going to find success early on. Again, if they're a stud, they'll be able to make it work. But the Cardinals are not a good environment for rookie defensive players in general to go to. Also, the Rams, I know they've got some productive pieces on that defensive line, but still, the void of Aaron Donald on that defense automatically makes me nervous for any young player they bring in to try and adjust that unit. I think this is going to be Sean McVay's first round pick since he got to the team. We don't know if he's good at drafting in the first round or not. There are a lot of questions with the Rams trying to think maybe that's not a good landing spot for a rookie cornerback. They're also going to have to go against DK Metcalf, Marvin Harrison Jr., Deebo Samuel, maybe Brandon Ayuk, twice a year.
Tyler Lockett, JSN.
Let's not include those guys in this conversation. There's levels to this. But moving on to the final position, which is similar to cornerback in the sense that if you are good at it, you will find success anywhere, even if you don't have much help as a rookie. The edge rush position. Another year where we got the guys at the top of the draft, very high-end talents. The Verse, the Chops, the Turners, All those guys could conceivably go to a terrible situation and win reps, get sacks, yada, yada, yada. But the best possible situations for those guys, one which no one's going to be talking about, the Panthers. The Panthers have a great secondary. They have guys who can cover and make that quarterback hold the ball for half a second longer. They've got Derek Brown on that defensive line, who is a beast in the middle, decent pieces on the edge as well. If a Dallas Turner somehow finds himself in Carolina, if the Panthers decide, hey, we are going to make this right and trade our picks, trade up, or if they get a guy towards the back half of the first round, I guess really at the start of the second, since they've got pick 33. If they get a chop and let him just rush the passer at will, I think he could find success as a rookie. But the Panthers are a good landing spot for any young edge rusher.
I don't know if I'd ever say the Panthers are a good landing spot for anyone
we're just
going
going
to
say, oh, David Tepper's a nap, then yeah, we could do that. Their issues are almost entirely offensive, though.
They just got their ownership is the issue.
Well, again, if we're going to do that, then the Giants are the worst landing spot for everybody, too, if we want to play these games. Another team worth touching on, the Minnesota Vikings. They got Gerard Green. They've got one of the best defensive minds in football in Brian Flores, who will certainly be able to help out young players. And this is where you start seeing the real top-tier guys, the Verses and the Turners going. If the Vikings stick at 11 and pick a defensive player, they'll probably find themselves here. I think they'll have a ton of success as a rookie. Obviously, going up against the Lions O-line and the Bears O-line could be troublesome as rookies, but they get a little bit of a respite from that going against the Packers twice a year. I think it'll be a rough spot in terms of the scheduling, because I've looked at both those teams' schedules. Not overly friendly at that left tackle position, but I could see them having a lot of success too, mainly due to coaching and help around them.
When it comes to edge rushers, you kind of have it or you don't. If you're more of a developmental edge rusher, it may take some time for you to really find your stride. If you're a high-end guy like Micah Parsons, you may find success immediately in year one, regardless of the defense that is around you. So I think a Dallas Turner, it doesn't matter where he gets drafted. A Chop Robinson that is an athletic freak, but may not be as technically refined yet. If there's an ideal landing spot for a player like him, it's a defensive line. I mean, you spoke highly of the Panthers, but that has talent around him where he doesn't necessarily draw a ton of attention, getting double teamed, or a lot more attention from the offensive blocking scheme where he can have some more one-on-one success.
Underrated part of that's the secondary. And the final team I'll throw out there for this good landing spot is the Chicago Bears. They're maybe looking to stick and pick maybe Dallas Turner, Mayverse at 9. Could see them going receiver or edge there. They've obviously got Sweat. Their cornerbacks, very high-level linebackers. I think they're overpaid, but they're still good. That is a good defense to insert a young player on. Anyone they bring in there at 9 will be the least of other teams' concerns when they're dealing with a 12, 13 sack threat on the other side and all pro level cornerbacks. I think that is another good lane. Really, the NFC North is a good spot to play football in right now, except for maybe a Packers lineman, because I think that's a rough spot to transition to straight out of college. But
that has been our best and worst landing spots for some of the top prospects in this year's NFL draft. Let us know who you think is going to fit in different situations. Will the Giants draft a quarterback? Will it work out? Let us know. Do the Giants have any future?
Stop talking about the Giants.
Like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.